Well, you guys, thank you all for having me. Doug, thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be here. Gosh, I have so many things. I've seen some familiar faces today that I just want to give a quick shout out to. Aaron Jimison of Valley National Bank, has been my banker for, 10 years, 11 years, something like that. Fantastic bank. So if you guys ever know a bank, I'm telling you, these guys are the best. Without Valley, there wouldn't be a Buddy Brew. Let's just put it that way. Another instrumental guy in the beginning of Buddy Brew is also here, Richard Hayes of Digital Light Bridge. Richard actually developed our very first logo and website, past the ones that I had created, which was actually a rip-off of the Starbucks logo. And we kind of figured out that probably isn't going to fly, so we needed to do something, and Richard saved the day, and really that's where we got our first start. So Richard, it's so good to catch up with you, and thank you for everything. So anyway, today, you guys, Charles kind of set the stage. This is going to be a little bit of a passionate, emotional roller coaster that I'm going to take you guys on. Like Charles, especially when I talk about Buddy Brew, there is a passion that rises in me that comes from one place, and that's him. So I'm not even haven't started to talk yet, and I'm already getting a little weepy. But thank you for paving the way. It's good. The expectation has already been set. So what I want to talk to you guys today is about a love story, and it's a love for a girl. My wife, so I'm the CEO and co-founder of Buddy Brew. My wife is the president and co-founder of Buddy Brew. And God knew early on that the way to my heart would be through my soulmate. And the very first date we had, she had a napkin and she had cliffs drawn across, saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. And I'm like, whoa, if this is what this is about, this isn't gonna work. I'm a project that's too big, too big. Well, 27 years later, here we are. So she's amazing. And without her, Buddy Brew would not be anything compared to what it is today. She's a strong, amazing, talented woman, and I married way up. She's drop dead gorgeous too. So it's also a story about a dog, and obviously Buddy Brew Coffee. Buddy is our dog. We're on Buddy 2 now. His actual name is Vinny, but his middle name is Buddy. But really, Buddy, the original Buddy, is in large part what we wanted to impart in our company. Things like loyalty, unconditional love, friendship. Those were key to how we wanted to develop the culture of Buddy Brew. So it is a story about how much that dog meant to us. And so it's also a love for coffee, right? My wife and I are complete 100% coffee freaks. I got to speak with a few of you guys before, and you can probably hear it's like, oh my gosh, this guy doesn't shut up about coffee. It's true. We know a lot about coffee now, but we really just absolutely love it. It's love for people, and that's really the crux of what I want to talk about today is people, right? In a fallen world, people need love. And we do that every day through a simple, affordable luxury of a cup of coffee. It's how we treat people, treat our staff, our employees. It's how we treat our customers. It's how we treat our vendors. It's a pervasive love that is all woven through our business. It is who we are. But more than anything, it's a love for God. We knew early on that, and I'll never forget the day we're engaged at this point, and we're going for a run in the middle of the rain, and we were just chatting about what was our new life going to be together. And it just was laid on both of our hearts at exactly the same time that our ministry wasn't going to be in the church. It took almost 15, 16 years for us to get to our true ministry, which is Buddy Brew Coffee. It's an amazing thing. So, okay, who are we? This is what we're going to talk about today, a little about who we are, what business we're in. I'll give you a brief history of Buddy Brew. We're going to talk about our mission, which is brew good, do good, and then we're going to talk, it's all about you. So this is the original Buddy. At the time, he was 16 and a half, probably maybe 6 months too long in his life, but we just couldn't let him go. This is our original shop. It was 650 square feet of retail space with 650 back end. That's our original roaster. We still have it today. It's still installed at our first shop at Kennedy. And so anyway, you know, as I mentioned before, Buddy was everything to us. He was our first child. And we couldn't do anything better than kind of immortalize him in this business that we were creating. And everything that he represented to us, we wanted imparted into our business. And we push towards that every single day. Currently, our business is organized really in three main ways. We have our cafe business, which is, you know, what most people see Buddy Brew as. We have 8 of those, 8 cafes, all based in Tampa with the exception of Sarasota, which is our furthest away store. Wholesale is really what our business plan was to begin with. We just wanted to sell coffee to anybody we could. Cafes, hotels, restaurants, offices, it didn't really matter, but it, you know, God had other plans. And so in the licensure of our first commercial space, by the way, we started in our garage in Hyde Park. We found out that wasn't quite legal, and so we had to get a commercial space. Anyway, we found Kennedy, and quite frankly, we probably had looked at 20 different properties and nobody would rent us. And our first spot, the land, we finally talked the landlord into it, and that's where we got our start. But it was supposed to be just a tasting room and a wholesale operation. Well, because of licensure and everything else, it was really almost identical to opening a cafe, so we said, what the heck, we might as well do that. Now, that was a dream, maybe a one-day thing, but it wasn't that day. Well, at least in our minds, God had other plans. So we opened the cafe, and it was the greatest thing we ever did. I'm a sales guy. You know, I've sold just about everything. You know, I had my own insurance and investment business. I had my own golf business. That was a disaster. But I did play a lot of golf, and so I'm an avid golfer. I actually represented an artist for a while, and thought that was could have been a good thing. It didn't turn out so good. But anyway, but we are entrepreneurs. So, but selling stuff was easy for me. It just always has been. That's you know, I didn't like the term salesman, but that is where I found kind of my legs in the world. So wholesale we thought was going to be easy peasy. You know, what we were doing was something different than Tampa Bay had ever seen before. And so selling this wonderful product that we had, we thought was going to be just, you know, we'd knock it down. Well, it just didn't happen that way. It was a closed thing. Buddy Brew Coffee, never heard of it. $10 a pound? Oh, hell no. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to swear on a Christian thing. You know, it just wasn't happening. So we ended up opening the cafe, and that's changed everything. And there was a spot in the cafe where people would come in and have a latte for the first time, and they go, what is this? I've never had this before. It's extraordinary. And I'm not saying that to be prideful. It just happened like 1,000 times. And they were like, oh, we're onto something here. This is good. And so the cafe business grew extraordinarily quick. So now, like I said, we have 8 cafes. It's to this day represents about 65 to 75% of our business, and about the same amount in profit. So it is the main driving force in our business. That said, our wholesale business, which is really where we thought we'd get our start, is a thriving business as well. We have really 2 main silos in our wholesale business. One is the traditional wholesale side, where we're selling to other cafes and hotels, restaurants, that kind of stuff. And then we also have our consumer packaged goods side, which is our distributed coffee. And we're now distributed in over 1,000 places across the United States, coast to coast. It's kind of an amazing thing. We're in, retailers like Publix, Whole Foods, Fresh Market, Sprouts, Winn-Dixie, and a lot of other little mom and pops. It's kind of an amazing thing. And then we have our e-commerce business, which really we started that business in 2008. And that was just on a whim. It's like, I was in the real estate business at the time on the commercial side. We thought Armageddon was here. It was, 2007, the summer of 2007 was like, oh my gosh, it's all gonna end. And Wall Street was closing down all their property divisions. And it was like craziness. And we got money either from Wall Street or from life insurance companies. And I was the junior guy and couldn't even get a Publix anchored shopping center finance at the time. So I had a lot of time on my hands. So I said, I'm just gonna throw up a website and see if we can sell some of this coffee. So by that time, I had been home roasting coffee since 2002. Is this our extension of our freakishness? It was just a natural path. And we're like, okay, let's do this. And I'll never forget the day that somebody other than my best friend or my mom bought coffee. It's like, holy Moses, there is something happening here. It's good. So anyway, so in that business, especially through the pandemic, has gone crazy and is a big part of what we do as well. We currently have about 140 employees and growing. At the center of who we are, though, is our vision, mission, and values. And I don't know, it looks like it's probably pretty hard to see. But anyway, our vision is to share joy and inspire hope that transforms our community and our world. A trite statement, right? Every company has to have this vision statement that is this big platitudinal kind of statement, and ours seemingly is the same. But it took us 1.5 years to develop these 13 words. And when you look at what happened over the last few years with the pandemic and everything else, this vision was something we clung to very, very, very dearly. So you think about like sharing. What happens in a coffee shop every single day? You're sharing some life together, right? But what are we specifically sharing? We're sharing joy. We're sharing joy for what we do, which is like this awesome product that we get to share with people. We share a smile. We share a little bit of love. We share a space where people actually behave as if it's their own, which is exactly what we wanted. It gets a little weird sometimes when they're taking their shoes off and putting them up on the table, but yes, it is a good indication that we're achieving what our goal was. It's theirs. So community is created, but what we're specifically sharing is joy. And as Christians, we know joy is something very different than happiness. Happiness is very circumstantial. It's all driven by like the storm of the day. What am I being presented? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I stressed? Am I whatever, right? Well, joy is something way deeper than that, and where is the foundation of our joy? It's Jesus Christ. It's the fact that we're redeemed through his great sacrifice, that we are now made back into what we were originally created to be, which is sons and daughters of the most unbelievable God. But that joy transcends the storms of the day. A cup of coffee with joy gives people hope that tomorrow is going to be all right. And during those times when there are shutdowns and, sneezies and everything we had to do just to operate, that simple cup of joy changed everybody's day, changed their day. It's like, okay, I can get a cup of coffee, it's going to be fine. Pretty cool thing. But what does that do? Like, what does that joy get to? It gets to this one thing. It's hope. It is the hope that tomorrow is going to be better. It's going to be fine. That hope is everything. And if we do that right, we change lives. We transform the people we come in contact with every day. And we have this deeper hope. This, in the knowledge and knowing that we are saved. Eternity is here. It's today and forever. So it doesn't matter what the storms are anymore, right? And if we do this thing right, it becomes transformational, and not just for us, but for anybody who comes in contact with us. It's a huge thing. But our goal can't stop there. We have to press outside of the four walls of Buddy Brew and become a bright light to our city. We give away more coffee than you could imagine for that very reason. We find need and we surge in where we can, to change these people's lives. But it can't stop there. It has to go all the way back to where the hardest work in coffee is done, and that's at the farmer level. All specialty coffee, and I'll talk a little bit more about specialty coffee in a second, is grown in the most impoverished areas of the world. These people don't have food security. They don't have clean water. They don't have electricity. Yet when you go to visit, and I've been there a lot, to a lot of these countries, there is joy in their hearts. They love what they're doing. They're happy people, yet they don't have anything, or next to nothing, but the most important stuff. But the gift of time is that we get to go back and we get to see what we do, because we're buying coffee relationally, direct purchasing coffee from these small little stakeholder farmers. And you get to see the impact of buying coffee the right way. And I'm not talking about fair trade. You guys all heard of fair trade. Fair trade was a great attempt, but it artificially sets the price of coffee too low. This coffee that we're buying is extraordinary, the best beans in the world, right? And when it's purchased right, and all that fat in the middle is taken out, they benefit. And you get to go back and you see a new irrigation system. You get to see a new truck. You get to see a new processing facility. That's what we're trying to do, one cup of coffee at a time, is change the world. Here's our timeline. You know, it is, I'm not going to spend too much time here because I don't have time. Like, by the way, I could talk for about 2 hours. I know you guys don't have 2 hours. So anyway, but we began home roasting in 2002, and I'll just kind of go through it. Like, I want you to know that this is a path of miracles all along the way. I would love to say that Susan and I are the most gifted entrepreneurs and business leaders in the world. We are not. We fail every single day. But God has always been with us. His hand has been on our business and on our lives. And so without him, this path would be very short. But we just opened our 8th, technically our 9th cafe. We don't operate the Oxford Exchange anymore, but we did for 12 years. And so, but that's a big milestone too. Operating in a university environment is a weird space, and a tough business environment, but it's an amazing thing. So anyway, that's kind of what we do, you know, our path there. So what business are we in? And when I was interviewing all of our new employees, it is one of the first questions I would ask any of them. What business do you think we're in? And they would say something like, oh, you're in the coffee business, you're a coffee roaster, or you run cafes, or whatever. And those answers aren't incorrect, but they're not exactly right either. We're in the people business. Specifically, we're in the people happiness business. We do that through a great cup of coffee, a great environment, a smile from the barista, and a lot of love, right? So we had to come up with a mission statement. Like, what is our mission? Our mission is to brew good and do good. Brew good is all about the coffee, do good is all about the people, right? So the brew good thing, and this is the hardest thing, and I've heard this like probably 1,000 times. It's like, oh my gosh, love your coffee, it's great, your shops are amazing. I bought a bag, I got it home. It just doesn't taste the same. Why, right? Well, it's the details of coffee. And so the brew good piece is all about those exacting details. We source specialty coffee, and that's a thing. It's not like saying craft coffee or gourmet coffee. It's a real term. And really what it means is, it means coffee without defect. And just like wine, all coffee is graded on a 100-point scale. In order to even be specialty coffee, it has to score 80 points or higher. Most of the coffee Buddy Brew buys is about 87 points or higher and gets into the 90s. Once you get into the 90s, though, the coffee becomes crazy expensive, right? But this coffee is amazing, and it represents the top 2% of all coffee in the world. So just think about this. Coffee is the second most traded commodity in the world. What is it second to? That's exactly right. It's oil, right? That's how big the whole business is. But we're in the very, very tippy top of it. This coffee is all extraordinary. So our job is just to not mess it up, right? So it takes us about 12 hours to develop our recipe, what we call a profile for each bean. So of roasting and cupping, that's tasting, roasting, cupping, and roasting, and cupping, and roasting, and cupping, and roasting, and cupping, to get this recipe, this profile exactly right. It's an organic product, not certified organic. It's an organic product that changes as it ages. So we have to revisit these profiles over and over and over again as it ages. Green coffee is legally allowed to be used for about a year. Most of our coffee is 2 to 3 months at the most, right? So it's all very fresh, extraordinary beans. But then it doesn't stop there, right? So we can roast this coffee to sweet, delicious perfection, right? But then it gets to the shop. And the power of the barista is they can turn this awesomeness into a cup of crap like that. And so that's been our challenge from the beginning, is like, how do we train this up? How do we do this thing right so we can ensure that this cup is always absolutely amazing? Because if it's not, then we're just another company trying to compete with Starbucks. And we're not trying to compete with Starbucks. We're very different than what they do. That said, I love Starbucks. Without Starbucks, there wouldn't be Buddy Brew Coffee. They brought the cafe back to the United States, and that's an essential thing. So I sing Starbucks praises. I'm glad that their coffee isn't so good, but because that is how we win. But anyway, but it's good, right? So it's all the details that go into creating that cup, and there's a lot. It's water temperature, it's ambient pressure of I said that wrong. It's temperature, barometric pressure. Like a high front, low front, it changes how the coffee grinds. It's how much volume you're currently doing in that moment, right? Because what happens is as you grind coffee, and the grind is super important, you don't get the grind right, the coffee's gonna extract differently. It's just a thing. But as that heats up, as those burrs heats up, it changes how the coffee is being ground, which means it's ultimately gonna change how it's extracted into espresso, right? So, and there's more. And then we had to become milk experts. And you've probably heard it before. Starbucks is more of a milk company than they are a coffee company. Well, we're not really that different that way. Milk is super important, so you have to have exquisite milk. We had to become milk experts. And think about it. Water, well, coffee's 99.9% water. If you have crappy Tampa water, you're gonna have crappy Tampa coffee. So we had to become water experts. So all these things are what make a cup great every single time. And that's why somebody at home trying to do it, if they aren't paying attention and just doing it the way they do it, it's not going to taste the same. It's just the way it is. It's a big challenge for us. And then there's the do-good piece. Do-good is like I said about the people, right? It's, that's the brew good stuff. I'll just spend a second here. So this is actually the coffee belt. The Tropic of Cancer down to the Tropic of Capricorn is where all the specialty coffee in the world is grown. And so if you look at all those countries listed there, we're probably, if we're not currently purchasing from, we have purchased from almost all of those different countries, right? And it's all about terroir, right? So it's altitude, it's the soil, it's the climate, it's all these things. Most of the best coffee is grown at very high altitudes, or higher altitudes anyway. And so anyway, that's just a little piece there. Some fun facts before I get into this. Do you know how many coffee beans it takes to make one 12-ounce cup of coffee? 100. Do you know how many coffee trees it takes to support an average coffee drinker's habit? 18. Specialty coffee is all grown, like I said, in these really tough places of the world. It's all picked by hand. There aren't harvesters that go out and shake these trees and pluck cherries. It's somebody with a big basket that, when full, weighs about 50 pounds on the side of a mountain plucking only red cherries off of a coffee plant. So think about that every time you drink a cup of coffee, because a lot of Buddy Brew coffee anyway. Starbucks a little bit, it's not like coffee can't be harvested, it is, but just not the coffee we use. It's a hand-picked, arduous process. So anyway, just do good. Culture's super important. Gotta have it. Our shops, the shops have to be beautiful. They have to feel like it's like home. And our idea is that it has to be like our kitchen, right? What in every house, where's the action? It's in the kitchen, right? You gotta feel like you belong there, you're part of something. Hospitality is one of the gifts that Susan and I both share. And so having people in our house was just inherent in who we are. We wanted to take that hospitality piece and put that into our shops. Like I said before about community, it can't stop there. We have to be a bright light in our community. And in the end, if we're not doing this right by purchasing coffee relationally, then we're really missing the vision of what we really wanted it to be from the beginning. So anyway, that's kind of brew good, do good. That's our mission, right? So how did we had to come up with a way to really talk about how do we do this now? Like the why is that we love people. We love coffee. We love this product, but how? So in the early days, we talked a lot about servant leadership, and obviously you guys have heard that term before, right? You serve first in order to even earn the right to lead. That term just was a little bit religious-y for the people that we hire that staff coffee shops. So it just rang hollow to them. So we had to come up with something that would change that. So we came up with this idea. Okay, we stole this idea of 2 T-shirts. Isn't the best stuff kind of really just copied, right? Anyway, this idea of 2 T-shirts, and it really told the story in a much better way. So there's 2 T-shirts. There's a T-shirt that we all put on every day, and that T-shirt reads, "It's all about me." And as you could imagine, that's a selfish T-shirt, right? But it's not a bad T-shirt. It is the T-shirt that says, today I'm going to get up. I'm going to push myself forward. I'm going to climb the ladder. I'm going to reach towards a goal and maybe even work on a dream. So it is a necessary T-shirt. But when you walk through the doors of Buddybird, you have to take that T-shirt off and you have to put a different one on. And that one reads, "It's all about you." And that is a paradigm shift in how you see the world. If I'm all about you, I know you. You know me. We know what our dreams are, and we know what our goals are. We know where our heart is, right? And so if you can have that kind of thing going, if you put that T-shirt on and I'm all about you, life becomes a lot better. It's a selfless T-shirt, right? So what does that mean? It means we have relationships with people, right? So if you put it in the context of a business, it would be, well, there's 2 main components to any relationship, right? The inherent one is trust. And so if you think about trust, in any relationship you have in your life, business or otherwise, if you don't trust that other person, that relationship probably is not going to last for very long. And eventually will probably go away, right? Do you guys agree with that? Right? So that is what we call the currency of the relationship. Picture a coffee cup. When that coffee cup's full, relationship's going pretty well. Starts to empty a little bit, a little dicey. Empties too far, it's kind of over, right? But the scary part of the relationship is vulnerability. And vulnerability, is putting yourself out there. You're opening yourself up now. You're revealing something about yourself. You're sharing things that are just personal, deep down stuff, right? And that's scary. Why? You can get hurt. You can get walked on. You can get taken advantage of, right? But in any relationship that has trust and then vulnerability comes together, that relationship comes together and blossoms into something completely beautiful. So we consider vulnerability the glue, right? So now apply this to the business, and what does it mean to us, right? It's like an employee coming to me and saying, "Hey, Dave, that decision you just made really sucked. It hurt me." I've made a lot of them. Hurt a lot of people. They would never come to me and say something like that if they didn't trust me, if they didn't know me. They would never be vulnerable in those situations if they didn't have this thing together, right? So the answer to that is like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What can I do to make this right? What can I do to change this? How can I make this better?" Right? Now, in that moment, I'm being vulnerable too, right? Because I'm like, "Oh, yeah, wow, I made a bad decision. Sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you," right? That's vulnerable. So bringing these 2 together is essential, and we take this idea and apply it to what we do in our shops every single day. What's happening when a customer's walking down the street thinking, "I need a cup of coffee. I'm going to go to Buddy Brew," right? What's happening in that moment? They're sliding their trust cup over to us, right? What are they trusting? And they have 100 choices, by the way. They could go to the Circle K, they could go to their office, they probably made a cup or 3 at home. For me, it's more like 4. Anyway, it's this thing, they have choice, but they choose us. They're sliding that trust over to us. And what are they trusting us for? They're trusting us for a phenomenal cup of coffee. They're trusting us for a smile from the barista. They're trusting us for hot, fresh pastries. They're trusting us for clean bathrooms and creamer stations that aren't filled with spilled milk and sugar, right? Most business people would say, "Oh, wait a second here. This is a light bulb moment. This is our strategy. This is what we're going to do." That is not our strategy. Our strategy is one thing: love people. If you love people, then of course it's common sense you're going to do these things, right? And if it's common sense, then you're like the seven dwarves. I'm gonna whistle while we work, right? This isn't like side work and just the stuff I have to get done before I get to go home. I'm doing this because I love what I'm doing. I love who I'm doing it with and who I'm doing it for. Changes the game. It's a huge benefit, but that's not the biggest benefit. Once that customer comes in and gets their cup of coffee, and that customer says, "This is horrible," right? Now, we have the opportunity in that moment to be a little bit vulnerable. And what I tell every single one of our employees is, I'm authorizing you and empowering you to make this situation right every single time. The reaction has to be, even though you know that's a perfect latte, "I am so sorry. Maybe I heard your order wrong. What can I do to make this right?" And by the way, giving them their money back, am I done already?
About 2 more minutes.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. What was I saying? What was I talking about? Vulnerability, right? You know, in that moment, right, we have the opportunity to change everything for that customer. They know they're not right a lot of times, but maybe we did get the order wrong. But if you do this thing right, then we're turning lemons into lemonade. And that's how the army of Buddy Brew followers has grown. It's because they see, even though if they're being complete, buttheads, to our people, that they actually care. They care about what they do, which changes everything, right? They can't help but walk away. It's like, this place cares. This place is different, right? The biggest benefit, though, is that when you do this thing day in and day out, like think about a cashier at one of our shops. They see 500, 1,000 people a day. They're throwing out a little bit of love on all these people, and what happens? They get a little bit of love back 500 or 1,000 times. It transforms their lives. And that's magical, because then they see that this thing is real. And bottom line is too, if you're loving on people, guess what? People pay for that. It puts more money in their pocket too. All in all, though, I'll wrap this up by just saying, Buddy Brew Coffee is really about one thing for us, and we find different ways to show it through our life, through the opportunity to serve all of our staff in our communities, is that we are redeemed children of God. He paid a huge price for our lives, which says something super important. He loves us beyond all measure, even though we fail him every single day. That's how much he loves us. And so when the storms of the day come, and when people are not nice, and all these other things, this is how we transcend it all. This is how we create the culture. This is how we serve our community, and ultimately how we serve our farmers. So anyway, thank you for your time, you guys. I appreciate it.